Welcome to Ancestry Sidebar number 3 from Circle Ancestry. In this series, I look more deeply into some of the background information and data that have supported my ancestry research. Today I'm talking about village population trends in Slovakia from the period 1880 to 1910. Several times in the Slovak Ancestry Adventure series that I produced, I listed population statistics and trends for the villages. This episode shows where I got that information, and I'll present it more visually. The main population resource that I used was the document whose title page is shown here. This roughly translates to Historical Demographic Lexicon of Municipalities of Slovakia, 1800 to 1910. Population Structure by Mother Tongue and Religious Affiliation by Juraj Majo. It was published in 2012, and it's straightforward to find online. As the title implies, the author has compiled population data broken down by both constituent mother tongue and religious affiliation. These numbers are all extracted from decadal Hungarian census reports of the time, listed separately for 1880, 1890, 1900, and 1910. The document is roughly 2,000 pages of tables and numbers. It's not an engrossing reader, it's a pure database. I'm going to focus today on the set of villages that are near and dear to my heart, those that I talked about in the Slovakia Ancestry Adventure series. First is the view of religious affiliation. These individual graphs are all on the same vertical scale, topping out at 1600. Since that covers the highest population level in my examples. The horizontal axis shows each of the 4 years represented in the data as discussed. In all cases, the total population is the uppermost line. The 4 villages across the top, Spišský Hrad, Rožkovce, Domaňovce, and Hryhovce, are the villages of my paternal great-grandfather Jan Fefra, who became John Novotny in the U.S., and his wife Maria Ševčík, who became Maria Fefra and ultimately Mary Novotny in the U.S. The 2 villages in the lower left area, Spišská Teplica and Zavadka, are those of my great-grandparents Steve Ruman and Anna Hardy, respectively, before they came to America. Finally, in the bottom right is Vyšný Medzev, where the Orient family on my mother's side originated. The key on the bottom left shows a lot more colors than appear on these graphs, because it contains the superset of all religions listed in the entire document. In several of these cases, the total population is very closely and sometimes indistinguishable from the highest individual religion. In the case of all 4 in the top section, that is Roman Catholic, with only Spišský Hrad having any considerable number of other religions represented. A few Greek Catholics, a few Orthodox, a small number of Protestants, and a small number of Jewish people. In total, perhaps just a few percent of the population. In the case of Rožkovce, there is effectively only one line because the total population and the Roman Catholic population are exactly the same for this entire period, with the total population also remaining below 100 for the entire stretch. Spišská Teplica is similarly almost entirely Roman Catholic, while Zavadka is almost entirely Greek Catholic, as discussed in the Slovakia Ancestry Adventure series. Vyšný Medzev presents an interesting dynamic. Over time, less and less of the total population is claiming Roman Catholic affiliation, with Greek Catholics and Protestants combining to make up about a quarter of the total population by the end of the period. Let's move to the language affiliation, or mother tongue as the author describes it. Due to the nature of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, many, if not most people in this region, even those not well educated, probably had some capability in multiple languages. We can't know now as to whether people interpreted this to mean what they spoke at home, or what they were taught in school, or what the signs in the village square or on the church bulletin board said. In any case, people had to make a declaration, and here we're seeing where they placed their stakes. These are the same villages laid out in the same way as the last graphic. Again, the total population is shown by the uppermost line. They're identical to the overall totals in the religious affiliation graphs. In the case of the upper four villages, as well as in Spišská Teplica, we see a predominance of Slovak. In both Spišský Hrad and Spišská Teplica, there is a noticeable but still rather small component of German and Hungarian in the mix. Závodka presents a contrasting picture, just as it did with religion. Mainly we see a predominance of Rusín, what is termed Ruthenian in the key. It is also evident that the overall population is steadily dropping, ultimately by about a third. Unusually, there is a blip in the Slovak population in 1900 that subsequently disappears in 1910. I don't have a clear explanation for that. It could be erroneous, a transcription error somewhere along the chain, including myself. If it does represent a real dynamic within the village, it remains a story to be uncovered by future exploration. Vyšný Medzev presents perhaps the most interesting case represented here. The overall population had a sharp decline within the first decade of this analysis, but then subsequently continued to rise all the way up to 1910. However, we see that the German population declined from a very high proportion to something less than half of the total population. In the meantime, both the Hungarian and Slovak populations rose, more than filling in that void. I have one other observation to share in looking at this small sample of villages clustered within the Spiš area. One thinks of the large-scale emigration associated with this period when so many of our European ancestors left for America. Does that phenomenon ring true in these graphs? There's a marginal decline in a couple cases, but only Závodka has a marked decline, while Vyšný Medzev grew considerably. First, I will point out that a steady population over 40 years is a sign that normal population growth has been disrupted. Taking the example from the previous Ancestry Sidebar episode 2, if Spišský Hrad had a nominal net increase of about 11 people per year, simple math of average recorded baptisms minus average recorded deaths, a first-order approximation predicts a growth of about 440 people over 40 years. Instead, we essentially see a flat line. This is rough math, but that thought experiment is sufficient to highlight that the trends we see here are not inconsistent with the notion of large-scale emigration from the region. Villages that should be growing are stagnating. Throw Závodka in the mix, and we do see an example of a practical evacuation. Finally, with Vyšný Medzev, we see that as the long-standing constituent German-speaking population leaves in droves, they are backfilled by other language ethnicity groups, a trend that continues for this village until today, as only the last few stalwarts hold their German language tradition. The mother tongue analysis from these records shows that the growth in Vyšný Medzev was not natural. Rather, people were coming in from elsewhere, probably not too far away, to fill in the vacancies left by the German-speaking immigrants. Keep in mind that this is only a small sample of villages and that this type of analysis could be conducted on other villages within modern-day Slovakia. I hope this has been thought-provoking and inspires you to dig deeper into the population trends in your ancestral villages. Thank you for listening today. Please like and subscribe to Full Circle Ancestry. I'll continue to bring content of interest to me. If you have any ideas for related subjects that you'd like to know more about, please let me know in the comments.